This is In FinTech, the podcast for the global FinTech community, brought to you by EC1 Partners.
Welcome to EC1's In FinTech podcast series. I'm Richard Lesser, a director at EC1 Partners, and I'm delighted to introduce Anoushka Rayner.
Hi everyone.
Anoushka is head of growth commodities at Paxos, and I'm sure she'll explain a little bit more about the firm shortly. But the two kind of main themes that I wanted to talk about in this podcast, which I think are particularly relevant at the time, are transitioning from traditional finance into fintech, and also women in fintech and traditional finance, and in particular women leaders. Without further ado, Anoushka, can you give us a little bit of a description about yourself and your current situation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. So a little bit about my journey. I started in finance back in 96. Started on trading floor with HSBC, moved through to UBS, and then in 06 moved into fintech sales, traditional technology sales, I should say, and then most recently I've moved into more blockchain, crypto-related technology. So question was about diversity, females in finance. So there wasn't many when I started.
No, so when you originally started in finance, it was with HSBC?
It was, yes. And on the dealing floor of hundreds, there was 10%, if less, women.
Wow.
And the roles were very concentrated in kind of that secretarial role, assistant role, and we had sales. There's always a nice range of women in sales roles. But I started off in the trading side of things, which was unusual for women or young girls. I would have been 19.
Wow. What made you decide that you wanted to get into trading in the first place, Anoushka?
I don't know if I decided it. I kind of found it. So I had a decision to make whether to go to university. I know we'll get into that later. So I kind of found myself on a dealing floor, and the energy of a dealing floor matched my energy and my character. So I think I kind of found my tribe, so to speak, early on in my career, which I know is fortunate, and not everyone has that luxury, but it's definitely worth trying to find somewhere where you know your character fits, regardless of what the industry is. Look for where your character fits, because then I think you can navigate a lot easier. So finance and a corporate ladder. So I didn't really make gender my point of focus. I worked hard, and I always, where possible, got it back to quantifiable results. So tell me what I need to do to get to the next stage or the next step of the ladder. Produce the results, and then you have the conversation about moving onwards. And I don't think, regardless of differences, if you produce the results from the expectations that are set, no one can hold you back. And that's the way I played it.
Yeah, but in terms of back then, did you have any kind of female leaders you could aspire to in the organisation? Were there people involved in that interview process when you originally joined that were
female? No, there wasn't. So there wasn't any female leaders, so to speak, that you could kind of view as inspirational. There was none. There was limited women on the dealing floor. There was no women in the interview process, from recruitment all the way through to getting the role.
And when you think how much
lower tier, the mid-level management, you'd see women, but nothing that was kind of strategic, setting the culture of an organisation.
Because nowadays, if you were going through an interview process and there's no women involved, it would just be ring massive alarm bells that the organisation has got no diversity. And
I think there's a couple of things. You need to dig deeper into that, because are they looking to diversify? You can't, if they're in a position where they don't have female leaders, they've got no choice. So dig deep. Don't just take that as a negative.
Yeah.
Ask them about their plans for female leadership, and don't be shy at that. And if companies don't want to answer it, they're not the right companies to work for anyway. As a woman, they're not going to support your career path. So let's not take it as a negative straight up front. Let's try and dig deeper into it, because they might be actively trying to diversify. So you need to do some digging.
So have you never felt in your career that it's been any kind of, not issue, but any kind of hurdle for you being a female in finance?
I really haven't. I know I haven't really found it a barrier. I've looked at everyone's strengths and weaknesses and thought, how can I work within them? How can I utilise anyone to help me gain traction in my career? I've also looked at paths I want to be on. Like, let's not fight for the path we don't want to have. Let's fight for the path we want. So that's where I've looked at. And I always think, you've got, if you lead it by, I always go back, lead it by data. If you perform the results and then you still don't get the encouragement and still get no's, leave the company. It's their loss. Be flexible to move on. We've got the freedom of that now.
Yeah.
Find a company that's really going to support you. That's what I would
and
say.
in that respect, how long did you stay in that first job at HSBC for?
Well, even though they didn't have many women, I never felt a lack of support.
Yeah.
So I was very much supported through my career. I was in a male-dominated role in trading. I didn't feel like I was held back. I'm not shy to ask. There's this thing about women don't ask. Let's ask. What's the worst that can happen? There's a no, and if there's a no, you try again. If there's another no, you move on. So I've never expected is to be given anything. You're not given anything in life.
No.
You've got a battle for it. I mean, let's be real. There shouldn't be uneven battles for anything. And if there are, use the freedom of movement.
Yeah.
Go elsewhere. But I actually, even though there wasn't many women in HSBC, I felt supported. And when I went to UBS, there was more women. It was then in the 2000 to 2004. But I also had good managers, which really supported my career development at UBS.
And in terms of what would they kind of sit down with you and plan out what your career path might look like over the next couple of years? How were they good managers?
There's certain parts of that, dedicating time to career. I think if you're interested in creating a career path for yourself, you'll always get natural support. But little things make a difference, and this is where managers can help young ones, not just female young ones, but all young ones, push back on the mundane admin jobs that are not relevant to a career path.
What, in terms of
I got some protection around how I was not protection. It was I also it's just like, just because they're junior, no matter what, give them a career path, give them tasks, and get the respect of the senior people.
Fine.
To go down a rabbit hole with it.
So basically, don't give the juniors the rubbish.
Yeah, you're not going to inspire
Yeah.
and keep great juniors if all you do is give them the rubbish tasks.
Yeah.
Yes, there's basic tasks that need to be done, but there's also some challenges you can give them. And I think that's the balance of any leader, female or not, female juniors or not, to keep great talent and to grow that great talent. You have to make their jobs interesting to inspire them to want to stay and move on in their career path.
Okay, good point. And then, so how long did you spend at UBS before you moved on from there?
4 years.
Okay.
But I left UBS because I had this desire to move to New York, so it's a personal issue.
I see.
So, and UBS had an office in Stamford, Manhattan, Stamford. I wanted to be in Manhattan.
Okay, so you made the move to the Big Apple. So you made the choice, Anoushka, to venture out, to move to New York and leave UBS. Earlier, you mentioned that you didn't go to university. Has that ever been a factor in the jobs you've taken in terms of applications? Was it more difficult because you didn't go to university?
So I was lucky enough, I think I was probably the last year HSBC would entertain someone without a degree. So I had a lucky kind of break there. I think companies are now looking at cross-talent, not just determining that you can be successful for a degree. But so my only challenge not having a degree my whole career was moving to New York. because of the visa. Nothing to do with my career. It was all about getting a visa. I could have had a degree in anything to get a visa to
just to put on that question.
And that's all it was. It was a determination. They would not give a visa. So then I was still determined to get to New York. So it's a bit like if there's something you want to achieve, keep going for it. Don't give up. So I found a company that would sponsor me to go to New York.
I see.
And that's how I eventually got to New York. So my only challenge is through not having
ministerial.
Yeah, exactly, a visa, which is out of any career path control. But interestingly, I did go back and do an executive MBA. I self-financed an executive MBA. I think it's partially to prove to myself and others that just because I didn't have a degree the first time around, I was capable. Never judge a book by its cover or its accent.
When was that? When did you do the
I did that 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, just as I'm going into leadership and stepping up the pace in my career, I'm also taking on a 2-year executive program. Which was
no
really,
freshers week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've done a lot of that on a Thursday night in the town. I went and went back, and I did that for more self-fulfillment, and I really enjoyed it. Even though I didn't go to university, I do like to study, so I do take courses on the side just to make sure I keep on top of things. So my career path wasn't affected by not having a degree.
That's interesting, though. You mentioned kind of the taking courses consistently, educating yourself and learning.
Yeah.
Because it comes on to a point that I wanted to come on to next, which was around evolving your career. And nowadays, there's so many people in traditional finance, trading, sales, whatever roles within investment banks that are looking to evolve, move their career, transition into FinTech, or, most recently, the digital asset space has been hugely popular.
Yeah.
How have you found you made that move? You transitioned from traditional finance into tech. How did you find that?
Well, if you look, my career path's always been a transition. So even though I stayed in traditional finance, I transitioned through different roles. So it's I would say, and I do this when I'm in projects. You've got to treat everything like a marathon. It's not a sprint. I know we all want to do well immediately, but that's how I've looked at stuff. So I was on the dealing floor trading, realised I wasn't the best trader, so technology was coming in. So again, I'm running a marathon. I looked at the past and realised that technology in traditional finance was the next phase. So then I moved into technology. Then again, and that was technology for trading. Had a look around a few years later and realised that the algorithms and automation was coming in technology even more so. So therefore, the capabilities of the product I had at the time were not going to survive the future. So then I looked and then went into post-trade. That was an area that still needed expertise, looking at it and automating that. So I moved into post-trade, and then again looked up and realised post-trade problems are potentially not going to be solved with the traditional technology, so then moved to blockchain. So what I've always done, I've never had a target. I know I want to go forward, and where's the best way forward? And occasionally you have to sit back, even if you're enjoying your job, and look up and say, where's the next move? And be willing to move, or be willing to take a side step to move to another path, to take a better path and accelerate your career.
That's really interesting, and you've obviously had within yourself the ability to do that. Some people, I think, find themselves at crossroads in their careers, and for whatever reason, whether it's the credit crunch, whether it's an event in the markets, they find themselves either made redundant or out of work.
So my career path's not always been chosen. I was made redundant. At one time, yeah. So I worked at Commerce Bank back in 2004. It was my sponsor to get to New York.
Okay.
So my original sponsor was Commerce Bank. I mean, they're doing great bank, but at the time they decided to close their spot desk in London and New York and have a central desk in Frankfurt. Again, Stanford, New York, it was even worse, Frankfurt, New York. So I decided that...
Sorry for any listeners in Frankfurt.
I just got a passion for New York. So I then took redundancy, so I was made redundant. It took me 6 months then to get to the path I wanted to be. So
really,
yeah, so I did buckle down and stay focused on trying to get to New York. I made it very clear everywhere that I wanted to get to New York.
So you were made redundant in London.
Yeah.
When you were in the process of trying to get.
Yeah, and I was 6 months out.
Okay.
So if you're made redundant and you're sitting around, don't worry, things will come around, things change. Stay focused and still play your cards, right? So like I wanted to get to New York, so I stayed focused. I made it very apparent that I wanted to get to New York. With that,
when you say very apparent, that's your network.
My network. I wanted to get to New York. Anyone I'd worked with, I actually then got recommended for a role in New York. Because I hadn't kept quiet about what I wanted to do. So yes, you do sometimes limit yourself to that specific, like, would people have been really interested in hiring me back in London if they knew I eventually wanted to get to New York? Probably not. So I made a conscious decision to limit my choices, but it meant I was uber focused on getting there, and then I did. So I have had the unfortunate situation of being made redundant, and it's not nice. But what you've got to do is just really focus on what you want and make sure you promote your talents and your strengths.
Yeah, because I think that's, often when I'm talking to candidates in the market, it's about kind of saying to them, in your current career in the past, the things you've worked on, your strengths, your client base, your network, how can that
transferable skills.
Transferred.
So I don't know if it's natural being a sales, I'm now in sales, that you've got to think about transferable skills. So that's even from like the beginning of your career. What can you build up that's transferable? That you can say, like I was able to go from trading to sales of technology. And why? Because my transferable skills was the knowledge I knew to a high degree of what traders required from their technology. So I was able to have a conversation with my client base. So look at like knowledge, expertise transformation, skills transformation. Just look at it and look at your like we've all got a portfolio of talent, and look at where it sits, and then go for them kind of jobs. Don't necessarily go back into a job you've just lost. Yeah. Because everyone who's lost that job is also going for them jobs. So look at where there's less demand for the job, and where you and also I took a sidestep to get back in. Okay. Knowing once I'm in, I can then accelerate, because once I'm in and I've got my foot in the door, I'm going to
really interesting point.
I was willing to. I was not having to take a step back. I was willing to take a step back, and I acted fast. So my competition was lower because I had the skills and was willing to take a pay cut to get back in. And I have to say, it didn't take months. We're talking like a matter of months before I got back onto where I wanted to be. Yeah.
Okay, because that was the other thing. I think in finance, people traditionally paid pretty well, and sometimes making a move into a different area can hit them in the wallet as well as anywhere else.
I mean, people have limitations on what they can, how flexible they can be, but don't be shy on doing that. On the idea, once you're in a job, you can accelerate within that job and prove your worth.
Okay. And then the first what would you say the first major move into the tech world was for you? Was it Triana?
So I went into trading technology through a company called FXCM, helped set up and establish their institutional trading offering. And then I moved, once I realised that the technology was definitely outsmarting the technology we had, other technology was coming in. There wasn't, and salespeople, it was getting flooded with good salespeople. I then moved on.
FXCM,
the industry. Okay. Yeah, so smart people were coming in. And I never said I'm the smartest in the room, but I am smart enough to know when I'm not the smartest. And then I looked at, the one thing I realised, and you've always got to look at the big picture no matter what you're working on, is that my barriers to being successful, or my clients' speed to success of any project, was post-trade. So then I was like, well, actually, let me move into post-trade. Post-trade was not really attracting talent because it's not sexy enough. So I went in and was like, well, I can actually apply my skills, transferable skills understanding, and help understand and unblock the challenges we were seeing in post-trade at the time.
And that was to Triana?
Triana, yeah.
And was that a firm that you'd worked with from a client perspective?
I was a customer of, my firm was a customer of Triana. I actually didn't know many people at Triana. Okay. And there was a break between me going to Triana. I also took a career break and went into education for a couple of years. So I come back into being made redundant and chose to take a career path and went into an education tool for 2 years. And then personal reasons went back to New York because I'd been back and forth to New York and London. And then when I was in New York, the education system was very different. So what I'd built for the UK market could not be transferred. So I went back in and got a job at Triana. So years later, nothing in post-trade had moved or changed. I realised it was even more of an opportunity to do some good work in post-trade.
And another factor I wanted to ask you about is how different are the, I suppose, leaders, management within a technology firm to traditional bank and brokerage? What would you say? Are there any key differences in your mind to how the managers were?
So you startups generally are innovative people, energized people. They want to move in changing, diverse kind of product and team to support that product. So one thing I found definitely on the Paxos side is that I kind of found my tribe in terms of we're all very different. We all bring different skill sets and different expertise, and it's something that Paxos really tries to foster and grow, that we don't want all the same people, because then no one knows whether you're on the right path or not, because you're not questioning each other enough. If you're all from the same industry, same background, you're not seeing problem. You may not see a problem because you're so used to it, you may not see it's a problem. So we actually really look for different skill sets, backgrounds. A lot of my colleagues don't come from finance, but we've got enough balance that we can really pull and push to try and solve and unblock some issues with technology that I've never experienced before. I've always been in a room where everyone's come from, I was in FX for multiple years, everyone's come from FX. Even in technology, it was all FX people, which was great. And I thought at the time was exactly what I needed. And then I moved. I went into an uncomfortable zone. I think I remember calling you up when I first got the job at Paxos, was saying, I feel like I'm talking Japanese and don't know a word of it. For the first couple of months, it was a new language, but I got my head down. I navigated the company, found out what I needed to know to get that first few kind of successful projects off the ground, continued to navigate and learn. But I have to say the first few months, I was quite a way out of my comfort zone, learning Japanese, and now... And
during COVID, remotely.
And it was remote. And the onboarding, it was the first full onboard remote, done remotely. I know more of my global colleagues than I've ever done in a traditional company. I think that you get comfortable when you're in an office, and I can understand those social bonds you make with your colleagues sitting next to you. But I've always worked in a satellite office. Like the head office has always been somewhere else. So or for the majority of where I work. So you feel that. You feel like there's head office going on and you're on the sides and you're trying to pull information. I might have sacrificed sitting next to 10 or 15 people, but what I've gained is 300 people.
I like the positivity in Anoushka.
I know everything. But I think you're hybrid, at least hybrid work is here to stay. Some companies like Paxos have gone fully remote, or we're remote first. So there are functions that have to be in an office, and there's functions that you can choose. There's offices that you can go visit, but not everyone has to go in on set days, etc. And some people struggle with it. And Paxos is dedicated to supporting and navigating those struggles. But I think that's probably partly why I've kind of just bashed on and got things going throughout my career, is that the positive is I might have lost, I don't think I've lost connection with 10 people because we still get together, but I gained the global work, like the team, which is huge. I'm quite positive on the new hybrid model.
That's good to hear. And you seem to have like a positive tilt onto everything that's happened in your career. You don't kind of dwell on anything.
It's not always been good,
Yeah.
but you can't change the past, and it's why hang on to it, because it's only going to affect your energy. And I know it sounds kind of cliche and really dull, but I really do. I don't lose sleep over anything that's happened.
Okay.
So I know that's when you're in it and you're in a struggling time, whether you might not have lost a job, you might be in a job and it's really mundane and boring. You find ways to get through it, because there's always things you can do.
Okay, very good. And if you don't mind, just in a nutshell, tell us what Paxos do.
So Paxos is a company that is redesigning financial infrastructure. The aim is to allow assets to move at the speed of the internet. So obviously crypto is associated with the brand, but that's really, we see that as a driver for technology adoption and testing the technology. We're really eventually we're on the path and on the journey to tokenise the world's most important financial assets and allow easier access to those.
Okay. And what's your actual role?
My position. So I manage the growth team for Commodities. So that's looking at commodities settlement in the LBMA market. So we have a settlement product that provides simultaneous safe settlement for commodities. And then also I look after PaxG, which is Paxos' gold token. So we tokenise gold and offer that token to the market that can. Gold, for the first time, can be transferred. Actual gold, ownership of the underlying, can be transferred in real time at the speed of the internet. So we're testing the waters with gold, some securities, and dollars. We also have dollar stablecoins, but we support one of the largest, or the largest, stablecoin in the market.
Very interesting. And then, in terms of in your position, you manage a team. When you interview people nowadays. What do you look for when what are the key kind of questions you ask or key things that you look for when you're interviewing and hiring?
Yeah, diversity in everything, the way you think. I don't want a team that all thinks the same, because then we don't question each other and we don't improve. Also, all our customers that we're selling to are not the same. So if I have everyone the same kind of character, I'm only targeting a very small subsection of my customers. So I really do look for different approaches. I also like different experiences to come in and to then, like, it's like the best of breed. If you're producing a product, you want the best of everything. And to me, a sales team is if you look at it as a product, you're trying to produce the best product. So I like to be challenged also. I like everyone to be challenged within the team. So everyone's experience, no matter if you're starting off in your career or you've been around for a while, everyone's encouraged to challenge each other within the team. We used to have think outside the box kind of sessions, where we were. There was one rule, and that was you cannot discuss anything about your immediate targets or objectives at work. So it was like for a session, let's talk about a problem and how we solve for it. Everyone had like kind of the floor to suggest ideas. It was a place where there was no stupid idea. And actually, it worked really well that we had someone that is not actually in product or in sales unblock something a challenge we were having. And last year, it impacted our growth no end. It was awesome. So I do encourage like different ways of approaching work. So what I look for in interviews is people that like that kind of environment.
And Anoushka, one of the kind of closing questions, I suppose, from me is what advice would you give your 18-year-old self, like when you were going for that first job? What kind of career advice would you give yourself?
You know what? I've worried too much over the years as well. So I have, even, like I say, it's not all been great. I've spent far too much time worrying. It's funny, I worry about the silly things and not about the major things. The major things I treat like a project. Okay, what do you need to do? How do you get on with it? The silly things, and I've had sleepless nights. I've had like nervous, semi-panic attacks before meetings. Don't. It's irrelevant. That's what I tell my 18-year-old self. Really don't bother. And also play your cards. I think a career path's like a card game.
Okay, you're a good poker player?
No, I'm not. But that's only got a couple of cards, right?
Okay.
I'm more of the long game card player. So you pick up your cards, you've got a set of cards, or you dealt your cards,
yes.
right? So then you lay the card that best fits that next move. Don't be afraid to pick up a few more cards to add and grow your hand of cards. And don't be scared to miss a turn, because it ain't your turn. And that's how I would say to my 18-year-old self, treat your career path like you're playing a card game.
Okay, so it's a good bit of advice. And Anoushka, I know you're passionate about helping others and involved in various charities. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
So I got involved in a charity called Many Hopes. So it started off as a charity helping children in Kenya. So children that are exposed to poor traditions, I'm going to just round it up as poor traditions. So we save them from those situations. We give them support. We give them a place to feel safe. We give them legal aid and housing. And then we also give them education. So Many Hopes also built a school. And with that, we educate the children with other local children. So we're mixing children's backgrounds and a bit and financial kind of status in the area. And what it is, and it does work. The suffered, if you will come through to help the suffering. So we've seen children go through the education system. They've gone on to be doctors, to be lawyers, to then come back and help the local communities with the issues that we're solving for at the moment. So we call it the right kind of influencer. So we're educating or supporting the right kind of influencer, where they will go then and influence the local communities to be better to the younger generation.
That's amazing. And how could people find out more about Many Hopes?
Website manyhopes.org. Also, if you follow me on LinkedIn, there is I'm also linked to them and promote any charitable events that we have. So please do help out. What costs you a coffee could actually feed a child for a month.
Wow.
And that's no exaggeration.
No, it's a bit of a big point to finish on, but thanks so much.
We can always do a little more than what we do every day in our careers, so always try.
Good advice. Thanks so much, Anoushka, for joining
No worries,
us.
Thanks for having me.
And see you there.
Thank you.
You've been listening to In FinTech by EC1 Partners. Find us at www.ec1partners.com or follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter or Facebook.